On the fateful December night in 1975, 19-year-old Lindy Sue Biechler's brutal murder left a scar on the community's collective memory. And today, in this story, we look closely at the very upsetting and pointless act of violence that troubled her family and the town for many years. 19-year-old Lindy Sue Biechler was known by all as a good-hearted and lively young woman. She had recently married her high school boyfriend after dating all through their teens. Lindy and her husband were excited to start their new life together as a married couple. Lindy worked hard at her job as a clerk at the Pennsylvania Power and Light Company. She enjoyed the responsibility of providing for their household. In her free time, Lindy loved spending time with close friends, going on weekend trips, and visiting with her large extended family. Everyone who knew Lindy remarked on her bright smile and positive attitude. She had a close bond with her parents and siblings. Lindy was beloved by her coworkers for her kindness and strong work ethic. Her whole future was filled with promise and opportunity. On the evening of December 5th, 1975, Lindy's aunt and uncle stopped by her apartment for a visit. When she didn't answer their knocking, they let themselves in. The view before them was a horrific sight. Lindy lay lifeless on the living room floor, the walls and carpet stained with blood. She was hurt very badly. Someone had hurt her by stabbing her with knives from her kitchen many times, more than 19 times. One of those knives still had a towel from her home wrapped around it and was stuck in her neck. It looked like she had fought really hard before she was hurt so badly. Most horrific of all, Lindy had been sexually assaulted by her killer. Evidence of the unspeakable terror she faced. Her aunt and uncle, overwhelmed by shock and grief, immediately called the police. When the police arrived at Lindy's apartment, they found new clues about her murder. The many stab wounds showed it was done in extreme anger. This was done by someone who hated Lindy in a personal way. The police thought she likely knew the killer. Detectives began interviewing neighbors and friends, searching for anyone with a reason to harm the well-liked woman. But they found no one with a motive. Boyfriends and co-workers alike described Lindy as a sweet, cheerful person. She had no known conflicts or enemies. The police searched the apartment building to find clues about who the killer might be. But back then, they didn't have fancy tools like DNA testing or advanced science to help them. So they couldn't find much evidence, and the case became unsolved fast. For Lindy's tight-knit family, the shock was amplified by overwhelming grief and the lack of answers. The murder rocked their world, leaving them desperate for justice. Lindy's parents, siblings, and husband were haunted by the aching question: who did this to their dear Lindy and why? In the months after Lindy's murder, people in the town felt scared and unsafe. The horrible killing in their quiet town made them lose their sense of security. They were frightened by the idea that Lindy's violent killer was still living near them. For many years after the murder, there was a feeling of worry and discomfort in Manor Township. Everyone kept asking themselves, will we ever find out what happened to Lindy Sue Biechler? Without strong leads or suspects, the shocking homicide case eventually went cold. As years passed, Lindy's family continued carrying the pain of not knowing who took the young woman's life so brutally. They worried her murderer was still out there somewhere. The lone bright spot came in 1997 when advancements allowed detectives to submit Lindy's underwear for DNA analysis. The results produced a partial male genetic profile, the first solid forensic evidence found. But with no database or comparison sample, it still wasn't enough to identify the killer. By 2019, genealogy DNA analysis had become sophisticated enough to generate new leads from decades-old cases. CeCe Moore, a pioneering genetic genealogist, began working with the Lancaster County District Attorney's Office to see if Lindy Sue Biechler's murder could finally be solved. Using public ancestry databases, CeCe Moore input the DNA profile found on Lindy's clothing in 1997. She then worked to reverse engineer the killer's family tree based solely on his genetic markers. This led to geographic patterns pointing to Italian ancestry. Many of the murderer's ancestors hailed from Gasparina, a tiny village in the Calabria region of southern Italy. This allowed CeCe Moore to narrow down family trees likely to contain the killer. Authorities could now investigate men tied to these lineages who lived near Lindy in 1975. One name jumped out: David Sinopoli. A former neighbor of Lindy's, Sinopoli had been interviewed but ruled out as a suspect at the time. Police began monitoring him, hoping to secretly collect DNA for testing. The break in the case came in February 2022 when David Sinopoli drank from a coffee cup at an airport, then discarded it. Detectives retrieved the cup, finally giving them a DNA sample to compare with the original evidence. The test results were clear and certain. Sinopoli's DNA was the same as the DNA found many years ago on Lindy's underwear. Also, more evidence from her pantyhose showed that he was the one who hurt her. This strongly suggested that he was the person who killed her. Armed with this scientific proof, police made an arrest in July 2022, charging David Sinopoli with Lindy's criminal homicide. After more than 46 years, her family would see the man who took Lindy's life stand trial. The district attorney said advances in DNA gave investigators tools that simply didn't exist when Lindy was murdered in the 1970s. They could finally provide the answers her family had ached for all these years. Lindy Sue Biechler's murder represents a powerful example of both the devastation of violence and the hope of justice. For almost a half-century, her killing remained an unsolved mystery that haunted a community. Science helped reveal something that was hidden for a long time. DNA evidence showed that it wasn't just any person who might have done it, but the man who lived close to Lindy and was talked to by the police a while ago. He had been living his life quietly, while Lindy's life was cut short at the age of 19, and she couldn't grow older like everyone else. The people of Manor Township can take some comfort in knowing this cold case that shook their town is now closed. And most importantly, Lindy's loved ones have the peace that comes with resolution after so many years. Although nothing can make up for the terrible sadness of Lindy's death, her family is comforted by the fact that they now know what happened. They feel like justice has been done for Lindy, who had her life taken away in a very cruel way. Lindy Sue Biechler leaves behind a legacy of courage and hardship. Hers is a story of the human spirit persevering even when hope seemed lost. A life remembered not just for its tragic end, but for the joy and kindness she gave the world each day she lived. Let her memory inspire us to appreciate the goodness in each day and to remember the importance of kindness in our own lives.